Hey there. Today I'm going to take a deeper look at the last two Guardians to join the affiliation, Ronan the Accuser and Drax the Destroyer. My name is Nate, and welcome to the Gamers Guild. These two finally coming out will help round out the Guardians affiliation with some durability and a couple of throws to help give the Guardians some flexibility that is on par with the Avengers and the Cabal for roster building. But before we focus on what they bring to the table for the Guardians, let's see what exactly they are capable of on their own. Drax the Destroyer, who resembles his appearance in the more recent comics than the older ones, has the alter ego of Drax. He has 6 stamina, moves medium, is size 2, and has a threat rating of 3. His physical and energy defenses are both at 3, while his mystical defense is down at 2. The first of his 3 attacks is Blades. It has a range of 2, a strength of 5, and a power cost of 0. What is essentially his version of Strike comes with a couple of nice bonuses. It has the usual bit about gaining power equal to the damage dealt, but it also allows Drax to reroll 2 of his dice if the target character already has the bleed condition, and on a wild he can then give the target character bleed. The timing doesn't quite work out for Drax to give the bleed and still get the rerolls all in one fell swoop, but there is still some really nice synergy there. His next attack is Headbutt, and it is only really meant for certain situations. It has a range of 2, a strength of 4, and a power cost of 2. On a wild, you give your opponent the stun special condition, and after the attack is resolved, if the target character is size 3 or less, they may be pushed away short. So as far as a damage output goes, this is way worse than his Blades. Not to mention it costs power, but a size 3 push is quite handy for a frontline character to move in and push away an objective holder. His last attack is Titan Killer. It has a range of 2, strength of 3, and a power cost of 3. And at first glance, it kind of seems that Drax's attacks roll less dice and cost more power as we move down his different attacks. But Titan Killer has 2 abilities attached to it that can make it extremely potent. The first one is reminiscent of another green character in that Drax gets to add 1 die to his attack roll for every damage he has. The second ability is a size 4 throw on a wild that happens before damage is dealt that will toss the enemy character short. So this attack is one that is a little bit more situational, but there is a tactic card that I'll talk about here in a second to give this attack a lot more versatility as far as when it can be used effectively. Where Drax really begins to shine though is in his superpowers. His first one is simply the Destroyer. It is an active superpower that costs 3 and allows him to throw a terrain feature or an enemy character of size 3 or less that is within range 2 short. This puts his throw above average for a 3-threat character by being able to interact with the size 3 characters and terrain features compared to Valkyrie and Doc Ock's limit of size 2. Drax also has a different named version of invulnerability with I Can Take It. It allows him to reduce the amount of damage suffered by an enemy effect by 1 to a minimum of 1, which also pairs really well with Titan Killer. But the ability that Drax has that I am the most intrigued by is Driven by Vengeance. It is a reactive superpower that costs 0 to activate. It allows Drax to place or move a Vengeance token on an enemy character who damaged him with an attack. Then, when Drax seeks his vengeance by attacking an enemy character with the Vengeance counter on it, he gets to add 3 extra dice to the attack. After the attack is resolved, the Vengeance token is removed, and Drax can only have 1 Vengeance token in play at a time. I really like this ability because it is thematic and makes dealing with Drax a unique problem, especially if you can't deal with him in 1 activation. And his invulnerability with 6 stamina make him that much more difficult to take him out in a single go. 3 extra dice is enough to make the wild on any of his attacks pretty realistic, and an 8 dice strike on a crackback seems really solid. It is worth mentioning that he has 0 changes on his injured side as well, so one of the things that really stands out to me at first is how durable he is for 3 threat. 12 stamina with the I Can Take It makes him one of the hardiest 3-threat characters we have. Yes, his mystical defense is only 2, but if you look at I Can Take It as a free block that just can't block the last point of damage, then Drax is almost comparable to a 4-4-3 on his defenses. So let's get into Drax's pros and cons. The first pro is the one I just talked about, and that is his durability for 3 threat is solid. Another one that I mentioned earlier is he has one of the best throws for a 3-threat character. As well, he has the potential for some really high damage output. But I guess that really isn't a pro and it's not a con, it's just something worth taking into account when talking about Drax. Drax's strike can be put on the same level of Baron Zemo's with the potential for those extra rerolls and the bleed. His next attack is more about game control than it is a damage output, which is a great thing to have on a 3-threat character, but his big attack is only big when certain things line up well enough for it. If Drax is lucky enough to live on 1 health, he can hit with 8 dice and maybe even 11 if you have a Vengeance token to burn, but more likely it'll be a 5 or 6 dice attack without the Vengeance token. However, there is a new Team Tactic card to help generate a perfect setup for Drax. No Matter the Cost is a reactive Team Tactic card that allows a character that is declaring an attack action during their activation to suffer 1 to 3 damage to play it. You then reduce the power cost of the attack by the amount of damage suffered. As a whole, this can be a really good card to get Drax to maximum damage, and then even reduces the amount of power he has to pay for his Titan Killer. This card will also do well with Hulk by letting him get to his next incremental damage step for an extra dice, and having the power cost of his Hulk Smash or Thunderclap reduced are pretty strong too. But as of right now, this seems really to shine for Drax and his Titan Killer. And because you are probably in the Guardians affiliation, if there isn't a need to play it, just pitch it for some rerolls. And while this card does work really well for Drax, it sort of makes him a one-trick pony for a round of damaging attacks, and then he is back to being a little bit less consistent. Which brings me to Drax's cons. His Vengeance is going to be easy for some characters to play around. It doesn't trigger off of throws or being thrown, so some characters can toss Drax around to keep him at bay, or just by throwing other characters into Drax to keep his Vengeance ability from ever triggering. As well, because he doesn't have any help in the mobility corner with a charge, pounce, or extra movement off an attack, Drax might often have to be a move and attack character. And if that means that he is to come in and headbutt an enemy off an objective for the last activation, then that's still really good. But it seems Drax wants to be taking and dealing damage more often than not. And if he isn't in a scrum, he isn't going to be at his best. Now, in a one-on-one matchup with another brawler, Drax should have a field day. But with a wider array of characters, the harder it is to find that perfect matchup for him. All of this may sound super pessimistic about Drax, and if so, I apologize, but those are his cons. I actually really like Drax for the Guardians as a 3-threat character, in part because while he may not always get to hit his stride, he will provide a much better option than Groot in most matchups, especially with his guaranteed push. I think the one thing that can be most deceiving with Drax is similar to the problem of Hulk in this game, where we have this idea of what Hulk should do, and his rules reflect that to a degree, but Hulk isn't really able to take a beating like we see in the comics and movies. I don't think that Drax is going to be a character who needs to be protected, as he is rather far from a glass cannon. Really, he is almost the opposite of one. He's very durable, but doesn't always have access to high amounts of damage output, which we might at first glance think he will have. I think he will be a great objective player with his throw and attacks that have a guaranteed push on size 3 characters, or the possibility of a size 4 throw. He can almost play the game like Spider-Man, who loves activating last to make some objective plays happen. As far as affiliations go, I think he can slide very nicely into Guardians and the Cabal for some extra power generation. The Avengers won't benefit from him too much, and he won't gain much from them either, and that's a similar case in Asgard. I'm not sure how much power he will readily have available for Wakandan rerolls, but I don't think he would be a bad fit with them as another great objective player, and gives the Wakandans some throwing power on the board. So that covers our latest green angry person to be added to the game. Now what about our big blue judge? Ronan the Accuser has the alter ego of Ronan the Accuser. He has 6 stamina, moves medium, is size 3, and has a threat rating of 4. His physical defense is at 3, while his energy and mystical defenses are a step above at 4 defense each. His first attack is a physical attack that is just called Strike. It has a range of 2, strength of 5, and a power cost of 0. It will gain Ronan power equal to the damage dealt, and on a wild, it gains a size 4 throw. The nice thing is that this throw is the same as Thor's throw on his strike, which the Marvel Crisis Protocol world has seen do work on tables across the globe. Ronan's next attack is Universal Weapon. It has a range 4 energy attack with a strength of 5 and a power cost of 0. On a wild, it can push any target size 4 and under away short, and if the attack deals damage, you get to apply the shock condition. And finally, Ronan's big attack is Kree Justice. It is also energy and has a range of 2, but has a strength of 8 and a power cost of 4. If Kree Justice deals damage, but doesn't daze or KO the target, they will gain both the stun and stagger effects. As well, on a wild, the attack gains Explosive, which means 1 free point of damage on all enemy characters within range 2 of the target. So unlike Drax, Ronan has quite a few powerful attacks that can be putting the hurt on just about anyone, especially with a variety of attack types, and he has some really strong superpowers backing him up as well. His first, and the one I am the most scared of, is his reactive power, Judgment. It costs 2 power to use and can be used when he or any other allied character takes damage from an enemy effect. The character that did the damage then gets the Judgment special condition, which so far is unique to Ronan, and hopefully it stays that way because Judgment says the character does not gain power when suffering damage from enemy attacks. So notably, the character will still get power from throws or superpowers like martial prowess and Counter-Strike, but this really hurts characters like Captain America who thrive off of taking damage to fuel his own defensive abilities. Ronan's next reactive ability is called the Accuser. It costs 0 power and triggers when an enemy effect would cause him to be dazed or KO'd. After the effect is resolved, this character immediately advances short and may make 1 attack targeting the enemy character that caused the effect. Then Ronan is dazed or KO'd. First of all, this is a fantastic superpower, especially if Ronan gets field dressing on him to give him a free bonus attack. And if he has the power for it, Ronan can bomb out a Kree Justice attack before he falls. Before going too much further, I do want to point out that he also has the innate abilities of Gem Bearer for the Power Gem, and he has immunity to poison, which isn't bad. As well, his injured side doesn't change anything. So my first impressions on Ronan is that he is exactly what the Guardians need. On the plus side, he has a great variety of attacks with throws, pushes, and status conditions. He basically has a long move with his 50mm base. Judgment can be downright devastating and disrupts one of the core pillars of the game, which is that comeback mechanic. He also has a pretty healthy character. It is a little unfortunate that he is weakest against one of the most common attack types in the game, but it is not a 2, and 4s on Energy and Mystic is quite nice. And his Accuser ability, guaranteeing him a punch on his way out, is really strong. There are only 2 downsides that I will hold against Ronan: his lack of a superpower throw, and in part, because of that, his weakness to enemy movement effects. Captain Marvel has a similar problem with no extra mobility, but at least she can double move and still throw something. If Ronan starts getting pushed around by a character like Shuri, or thrown around by Vision, Captain Marvel, or Thor, they can pretty effectively keep him out of the game by making him have to either double move or move and universal hammer. But in pretty much any other matchup of characters, Ronan will be putting in work. Before moving on to affiliations, I want to talk about Power Gem and him. For the most part, I'm a fan. This will give him guaranteed power for Judgment and be able to Kree Justice more times than not. But I do not think he has to have it to be effective. He is well worth his 4 threat without the gem, but he will never complain about having it for consistency. That is everywhere except for the Cabal, that is. I think Ronan can go without it in the Cabal by suddenly making his universal weapon a power-generating attack. So I think Ronan fits right in with what the Cabal's leadership ability does, and really, Ultron dropping off Ronan seems really good too. Obviously, Guardians will enjoy having Ronan amongst their ranks as a bruiser and a power negator for an affiliation that loves putting out damage. Rocket, Star-Lord, Gamora, Nebula, yeah. Avengers isn't a terrible fit for him either, getting to reduce Judgment down to only 1 power, and with the Power Gem, he will have some to spare, which make good use of the Wakandan rerolls. And any big hitter like this will enjoy their time in Asgard, getting to get a free shake on a status condition or remove some damage. I think both of these 2 characters are worth picking up if you are a Guardians fan, and even if not, they will slide into several of the other affiliations quite well, especially the Cabal. I do also want to mention the other Team Tactic card that these 2 come with, which is Unearthly Rage. It is an active Team Tactic card that can be played for 2 power if the target character is within range 2 of 2 or more enemy characters while making its next attack. Add 2 dice to the attack roll. There isn't too much to say about this card. It is very similar to 1-2 punch and heavy firepower, 2 power for 2 extra dice on an attack. If you enjoy these kinds of cards, great. If not, then it's probably not for you. So that covers the last of the Guardians, for now at least. We'll hopefully have Angela sooner than later to add to Asgard and the Guardians, but before that, we just get to wait for the Mad Titan himself and see what he adds to the game. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time, keep on gaming.